All right, people. I have arrived.
Yes, you have.
Well, that was loud. Was that your table?
Yep.
Yeah, tables. They're funny things. Make sure I'm not echoing. Ian says hello and welcome. That's his new handle for his new channel. Do it yourself, Coyote. Some people have popped in. Hope everybody is safe wherever you are, whatever weather you're having. We're having a gray day. Let me know that you can hear us and that I'm not echoing. Erin says hello. Hi, Erin. Welcome. Ian says, please chime in on mystical and magical subjects. You make our channel. Erin says, I have rain. Oh, yes. Well, we might have rain, but we're not having it yet. It's just sort of gray. So hopefully rain is a good thing, depending on where you are. Because I've noticed there are some places where rain is not what they want.
Yeah, I'll have to see. I'll have to pull our door in. If it looks like it's going to rain, I'll put it in the breezeway.
Yeah, Ian is creating and fixes for the screen door that we bought. He will be putting that in a video. Beth says, hello, blessed be everyone. Hi, Beth, welcome. Our bunny is still in jail. He gets out tomorrow. Tomorrow he goes in and has his stitches removed. He is very bored.
Yeah, poor little guy.
He did move his puzzle, though, all the way to the back.
Okay.
He moved that on his own the other day. He decided he did not like the placement of his wooden puzzle, so he picked it up and dragged it around and put it in the back. So now it's back there. I don't think he's taken it apart any more than he had already. Trying to keep him, interested in his environment. Beth says, little buddy, yeah. Checked him over pretty thoroughly this morning, though. His stitches look all healed up, and I think he is going to be so happy to get out of jail. Once he gets out, I don't think we're going to see him. If he sees that thing, he'll be gone. He's like, yeah, I know what you are. Yeah, we don't want to be in there anymore. So it's been hard, but yeah, he's eating, he's drinking his water. And we're, petting him occasionally. Arcane says hello all. Hi, Arcane. Beth says, love your t-shirt, Siofra. Thank you. This actually was given to me by a member of our circle. She wore it to a group one day, and I said, I really like your shirt. So she took it off and gave it to me. I was thinking about that today, actually, and how in some cultures, admiring something that someone has means that they need to give it to you. And she sort of acted like that. I was like, what? Wait, okay, thank you. When I lived up north, that was one of the things that I was told by people when I first got there.
Yeah, that's so strange, though. What if you just want to tell them you like their stuff and it's cool?
Yeah, that's the thing.
You're not trying to get it.
In a native household, you go in and you say, oh, this is a beautiful item. I love it. Once they know you admire it, you always end up walking out the door with it. So, yeah, it's a very interesting, cultural approach. I think it's so that they don't get, it's part of not being attached to your things, and wanting to make your guests feel welcomed and handing over your stuff. Of course, the potlatch is kind of like a whole celebration of giving away things. And so, that's one of their big ceremonies, honoring changes in someone's circumstances and all that other stuff. Having someone throwing a potlatch, and the person who throws the potlatch is the one who gives away all the stuff, kind of thing. It's sort of interesting. Beth says, I've done that before with the lady's face in shock in a circle. Couldn't figure out why she was in shock. She was in the circle too. Yeah. And so I wear this to honor her. And I like the saying. It's like, we live by the sun and we feel by the moon. So I just thought, that's just kind of cool.
Yeah. I had somebody give me a sweater once for that reason because I told them I really liked it.
Wouldn't it be nice if the world worked that way? You like walk into a store and go like, I really like this. And they go, well, here you go.
I really like your Ferrari.
That'd be pretty funny. Yeah, I don't see that working in our culture, the way we have things set up. But hey, it's a good thing. So, Teresa says, hi, first time joining live. Hi, Teresa. You've had a lot of comments on my videos in the last couple of days, so thank you for watching. Arcane says, Siofra, I've been wanting to meet a fairy for a long time. Unfortunately, my first head-on encounter was a frightening astral one. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't know what to say. That's a sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry. It's no fun if they're frightening. So maybe go to a different part of the astral. Try a new location. Beth says, what is our topic for today, beauties? Arcane says, it was a goblin, I think, in my room. Ah, okay. It could have been a thought form too, not necessarily an actual entity, because I've seen things that look like that. And there's other things. There's, okay, question. Did it have a big round head? Or was it pointy? What was the shape? That would be a good thing to help identify it. Because there's these things that have been showing up. They sort of eat negative energy.
That's kind of an interesting thing, though. A way to point out the difference between mental and astral thought forms, so to speak. I mean, I guess a thought form would probably be mental, but the astral ones are the ones that might take on scary shapes and things like that. If it's a mental thought form, it'll always have the shape of what the thought form is about. So if it's violent, it'll likely be like jagged and red and all those things you think about, you know. So at least the mental ones, they don't take on such frightening shapes. They're more just shaped however the thought is. They take on like symbolic shapes. They don't really have enough of a life force to determine anything like that.
I think the things that I met when I was going through my dismemberment were probably astral because they were so complete. I mean, they had a color and a look and an energy, and they exuded a response, a feeling response in me.
I mean, I once perceived some thought forms of anger at me, anger and harm towards me, and they seemed like to me they looked like a fleet of sharp triangles flying at me like that. So symbolic, somebody just wanted to hurt me with something, that type of thing. So yeah, those are usually the astral ones, are the more frightening ones.
That certainly was a frightening experience altogether.
The middle ones have kind of a direct symbolic shape, but the astral ones are one that can be amorphous and be ugly looking, scary shapes and things like that more so. They have more of a form, I guess.
So Teresa says, ignore my above comment. I was trying to say I've been getting a lot from your videos and amazed by how many there are on so many topics. Yes. Yeah. I had someone sent me a message last week, I think sometime, and they sent us some videos of what they thought were fairies, and there were problems with the video. I mean, it would be too easy to point to things that it could have been faked. Whether it was faked or not, I didn't know, and her response was, I knew no one would believe me. No one believes in magic anymore. And I'm like, hello? I have over 400 videos on the subject of magic, and I've met fairies in person, so I believe in them too. And it's not that. It's just these are problems with the video. So that was kind of interesting, but yeah. Arcane says, well, it was a cat at first sitting beside me in bed as I became astrally aware just watching me. When I reached to pet the cat, it went absolutely berserk. So it jumps off the bed and disappears, and next walks out this really short, grimacing creature with short, shark like teeth, snarling at me, and then it walks through the wall. It sounds like it was a fear thing. It was probably, you probably startled the living daylights out of it. So it may not have been that it was bad, but what you got was it didn't know you could see it, and you reached out to touch it, and then it became aware of you, and it freaked the hell out. And if it had taken on a cat shape, it would have maybe some of the same properties like teeth, right? Growling, hissing, something or other, and then, to make you back off because it went, oh my God, what's that? I was just laying here minding my own business, and this giant hand comes out of nowhere and messes with me. So yeah, it could be a misunderstanding. And it could have taken on that shape as a self-defense kind of thing. I know that it took a while for the fairies to get used to the idea that I could see them, and I had like the testing that they did every so often to make sure I could actually see them. But yeah.
Well, and it's like there's always, that reminds me of, not totally related, but when we moved in here to the house, it took some weeks before the beings around this area were used to us. It was like every time we started doing something magical, I started doing something magical, you get this feeling of them freaking out and everybody was looking till they kind of got used to us doing it.
It's like, what's up? What's up? What's up?
Yeah.
What you doing? Well, I know when we were consecrating a temple at one of our members' houses, one of the things that happened there was all of a sudden all the spirits in the neighborhood just suddenly was like, whoa, look, there's witches. They moved in. And I could feel their interest and so forth and their surprise. And
yeah, just like everybody else, they get used to you being there and you get used to them being there, and then everybody's in harmony again. But they sure notice right off the bat when you suddenly start doing magic in a place where it hasn't been done.
Yeah. Well, Arcane's, let's see, Beth says, did it walk through an inner wall or an outer wall? Good question. Arcane says, it was my first time using mint under my pillowcase to attract some. I thought, nice ones. Well, if it was sleeping like a kitty cat, it might have been nice to start with. Teresa says, I shared the parasite video to my good friend who smokes and drinks. She told me not to send any more from that ghost lady. She is crusty but has a soft heart. Oh, well, sorry. That says, when I moved in here, all the spirits threw a joyous party. Oh, that's always nice when the neighbors are happy to see you come by. It's but it's like they have personalities and emotional reactions and things like that, different than ours to a certain extent, but a lot of things are similar as well. So it doesn't sound like it was a wall crawler, so that's good because you don't want those around. But they're kind of something that has started showing up in a lot of paranormal investigations over the last 10, 15 years, I think, is when I first started to notice them. And I'm not sure exactly what they are, except that they start to congregate around negative energy. And I was doing a distance healing for a woman I knew from childhood who was in LA, and her entire neighborhood was covered with them. They were just crawling everywhere. And so was her house. I was able to clear her house, and she ended up being able to recover from what she was going through and get help and get into a psychiatric facility and get treatment and so forth. So that was fortunate. But I couldn't do the entire neighborhood. It's just one of those things. And then we had a local one here at a local apartment building that I went into this woman's apartment because she had some stuff going on in her apartment. And I looked out the window and looked outside, and I saw them all climbing the walls of the apartment. So I knew there was probably a lot of drug use going on in the apartment and fighting and stuff like that, because that seems to be why it attracts them, or what attracts them. And yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing things from a different perspective that way. But yeah, not everybody is ready to see my videos. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't like tried to be more, I don't know, assertively public. I mean, I'm quietly public, just hanging out, doing my thing, and figure that way the people that are going to appreciate what I'm doing and get something out of it are the ones who are going to most likely find me. So, yeah, reality is what it is, and not everybody sees it the same way. That's for sure. But that the invisible realms that are around us all the time and what we create in them is just such a fascination, trying to figure it out, trying to put all the pieces together and kind of separate out my thoughts from other people's thoughts, and then um, actual beings that are separate from me and have their own existence regardless of whether I notice them or not, and then human spirit ghosts and things like that that are also separate but I can interact with in a different way because, you know, being a human myself, all that stuff. It's quite fascinating. So this is the new moon today, and I think that was why my Kundalini went crazy between the full moon and the new moon. So I'm hoping I'm going to get a bit of a break, and that I've like percolated something because I slept better last night. Molly C says, "Hello, Siofra. I think you're lovely. I can see fairies. I have the cheeky ones that laugh at me when I'm getting changed. One left a print on the wall." Happy new moon. Yeah. I was reminding my granddaughter this morning that the moon is in the sky during the day on the new moon. We just can't see it because it's invisible. That says, "I moved in a bad energy place decades ago. I helped a little, but I left in a couple of months, not out of fear, just done. 2 bodies in the woods buried in the back was too much work having a full-time." Oh yeah, no kidding. You don't need that. That can be difficult. And you know, you just never know for sure what you're going to run into. A full-time practice and concerned for taco. Yeah. You have to take care of you for sure. I did one house, the one where I saw some wall crawlers in, actually, a different one. And he renovates vehicles. And we were going through his garage and he was working on this one convertible. And as I was walking by it, all of a sudden I saw this horrific accident, a woman in like an evening gown, like prom kind of thing. And so then I asked him, I'm like, okay, because yeah, there's something going on here. And he was rebuilding that thing. I mean, he was using a lot of Bondo rebuilding the body. Apparently had been in a very bad accident. It wasn't visible to me to the naked eye, but it certainly was visible to my inner eye.
Bondo is not the way to do it if you have a choice.
But yeah, so I think he bought it at auction for practically a song because of how bad it was. But yeah, that says I helped some cross, but the land was bad. Yeah, and sometimes, you know, it can have that effect for sure. I was on a walk with some friends of ours up the coast, and they had an area in the woods that they'd been trying to cleanse, and every time they cleansed it, it would get better for a while, and then it would get worse again. And so he brought me there, and you know, we went underneath the shade, and you could feel it instantly. And I was just like, okay. And I saw 2 spirits, 2 humans that had been murdered that were there. And I was able to cross them over like then. And then the air, of course, changed. It got bright and everything. And then he wrote me a few months later to let me know that the creek that ran through there had completely cleared up. It was no longer full of ick and stuff. And the area was so much better than it had been. So I know areas can be
That's good.
rehabilitated. So that was kind of nice to know that I had a long-term effect. And it's always funny when other witches are asking you for help. And it's like, okay, let's see what I can do.
You know, everybody has their own specialties to a certain extent, or something they're good at in particular.
Yeah. Beth says that's exactly what happened. And Jacqueline says, hey, Siofra and hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline.
We're so happy that you're feeling so much better. Jacqueline and I had a nice long talk yesterday, got to check in, so.
I think I need more coffee. I'm going to go get some coffee.
Okay, well, Arcane says, yes, Ian, indeed. To what you just said, I guess. If you remember what you said. So glad that you could join us, Jackie. That's awesome. She's home from the hospital, feeling better, still accepting energy from people if people want to send it to her. Jennifer S says, good afternoon. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Yeah, I understand Mercury retrograde's going today too, so that should be fun. It doesn't usually affect me adversely, but it often affects Ian, so we'll see how this one goes. Pharaoh says, sunshine. Thank you, Pharaoh. Beth says, yeah, I felt she was better. Blessed be. Yes. And I know that you're one of the people that actually sent her some energy. So yeah, they figured some things out at the hospital and they're still working on it. But she's definitely seems to be going in the right direction. And we want to keep it that way. I'm going to do another distance healing probably the end of the week. The end of this week, kind of somewhere in there. We're arranging. Jacqueline says, yes, feeling good. Stamina getting better all the time. Yay. Makes us glad. I was thinking about that invisibility thing because we were talking about that last week and on our Facebook group, and thinking about, you know, how you can use the Akasha to kind of wrap around yourself and make yourself virtually invisible. And it's so hard to explain exactly how you do that because you have to seriously work well with the Akasha, get to the point where you can absorb and accumulate that connection without losing focus. And, you know, concentration is hard to maintain in the Akasha since it's about timelessness and all time and no time and all those contradictory concepts at once, kind of like everywhere and nowhere and all time and no time. And yeah, so it is kind of tricky to work with it, but and on the whole, I think most people don't. I don't know that they can't, but a lot of people don't. So it's one of those things. I think I always had a connection with it to a certain extent since I was little. Beth says, I know it sounds crazy, but for it to work for me, I have to have their coordinates. Don't ask me why. I like that too. That's one of those things. It helps me name coordinates where the, you know, so I can know for sure, unless it's somebody I know really well, like Ian's friend Fox was going through a rough time and it impacted Ian. He was getting ready to meditate earlier this week and all of a sudden he was like, wow, something's wrong. I need to call him right now. And he was in a really bad way. So we did a Reiki session on him, the two of us together that evening. And I usually want to know where people are, but I've known him for so many years. I know his energy. And I realized that in cases like that, it doesn't matter where on the planet his body might be. I'm going to find his energy signature. And so we did. So, but in general, I like working that way, especially with people I've never met in person, particularly because everyone's energy is just slightly different, especially if they have a common name too. That makes it, hey, John Smith in Chicago. Which John Smith, you know? So that says like a black onyx egg or even golden egg, but it really works and it gets to the point where it's just easy. Yeah, it's practice and ability and so forth. Teresa says, if someone is being invisible and spying on you, how would you discover them? Well, it depends. No, this is to make yourself invisible. And theoretically, someone could be invisible and spy on you, but they would have to be so friggin' advanced. They'd have to be like a master, illuminated master of some kind to be able to do that and you not notice. So I would not worry about that at all. I don't think that I know anyone who was capable of that.
Generally you won't find people who can do that. They won't be just spying on you because they're beyond that type of behavior at that point usually. But there are ways you could detect them. If you become advanced enough to do it, you'll also be advanced enough to detect people doing it. There are certain methods. For example, if you don't fill yourself with akasha at the same time, though you'll be invisible, everything you do will still make causes in the akasha. So anybody who can read in the akasha and in the akashic records can tell everything you did anyway, even if you were invisible. So there are means and ways, but you have to be at least advanced enough to do it before you can access any of the means and ways to detect it also.
I had a witch when we had our falling out, and I rescinded her permissions to be in our space. Tried various methods to try and get by my particular barriers, guardians, psychic energy field, whatever. And she tried in the astral, and I rebuffed her. She tried in the mental plane, I rebuffed her. She tried in my dreams, and I rebuffed her. I mean, it's like, yeah. So it's not like that. Jacqueline says, thank you, Beth, and all others who sent healing. Wonder if anyone was working this morning. My foot was pushed down very noticeably. Beth says, if I'm already connected to you, I've got it. It helped a friend recently. I helped a friend recently and got too invested. She didn't put the work in. Her husband left her 3 times and she took him back 3 times. Blow your choice of dust on them, but that's so rare. Jacqueline says, Beth, you can't help if she won't help herself. Yeah, Beth agrees. Hearts to Jacqueline. Teresa says, good explanation, Ian. Jackie says, like all your healing won't help me if I don't do physical therapy. Yeah. It's kind of like all magic. I mean, doing a money spell or a job spell only works if you're doing things to allow the universe to give you money, to make money, or to find a job. I mean, there has to be some real special circumstances for somebody to just suddenly wander up to your door, knock on your door, and say, hey, I think you're looking for work.
Well, there's this old joke about this guy who prayed to God every year for 20 years to please let him win the lottery. And he never won the lottery. And pretty soon, eventually after 20 years, he hears this voice come down from above. You got to buy a ticket first.
Beth says, Jacqueline, she's a gifted psychic and knew all this was happening, but stayed because they were married over 40 years and didn't want to lose her money. Lazy witches drive me bonkers, but I still have to have compassion. Well, people make choices for so many reasons, and being stuck in a situation sometimes, for women especially, it seems, financial considerations become a huge part of why they might stay in an abusive relationship. Survival is a pretty strong instinct that everybody has, and thinking that you can't make it on your own. When my mom left my father, he was convinced that she'd be right back because she couldn't do it on her own. She managed to do it even though she had 4 children and was on her own, partly because her father gave her some IBM stock, and that she sold a bunch of it, and it helped bridge the gap between her leaving him and finding a job she could do and getting a job and making money and stuff like that. But she succeeded. A lot of times people don't think that they're going to, and then they stop themselves from being able to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish by the self-doubt and negative self-talk and putting themselves down and so forth. And
yeah, a lot of it gets so ingrained it becomes automatic and people don't even notice that it's happening within them.
just a habit, way they talk to others and about themselves, and how they talk
Yeah.
to themselves about themselves. And my mother was funny. She's a good musician. Um, she played the piano when I was a kid. She found an upright piano for $20 or something like that. $5 actually was one of them, I think. And so we always had music in the house. But anytime she was going to sit down at the piano to play a piece, she would always apologize for her failings in front of doing it. So lowering people's expectations for how well she was going to do. I haven't practiced in a while. I'm kind of rusty. I'm not familiar with this piece. Maybe my piano is out of tune. I'm not sure. And then she would sit down and play it and do a fine job. But I always thought that was interesting because I could see the self-deprecating kind of, but also
Yeah,
managing
and,
other people's expectations.
self-deprecating is okay to a certain extent, but you don't want to, people, that's setting an image in people's mind that you're going to do a bad job. And, they can choose to decide whether you're doing a bad job or not, but you shouldn't set yourself up for people to think you are. That's just, you're influencing their subconsciousness too,
Well, I
by
agree.
doing that. Yeah.
But it was such an ingrained thing every single
Yeah.
time. I don't know if she still does it or not. She's now 94 and not performing in public anymore. But so Teresa says 2 things I'm wondering about. First, I'd like to know more about the Saturn judges, and second, what are your astrological details if you'd like to share? Okay, so the Saturn judges, every planet has got beings that exist on a spirit plane in their sphere, and Saturn is no exception. And they're sort of like I'm a Capricorn. We might as well say that since we're talking about Saturn. Saturn is my ruling planet, and so I might have had like more of a connection to the energy naturally to start with because of that. I don't know, but when I was at a court proceeding with my first husband. Actually, it was his trial. He had committed rape, and I was in the courtroom after I had done my testimony. That they asked me questions about where he was, etc. And I was looking at the judge where he was sitting up there, up above everybody behind his giant desk, and above him there were these 3 giant heads. I mean, they're like this big around.
But just an
Floating.
appropriate number because the number of
3
Saturn
is the
3.
number, and I didn't really know any
Yeah.
of that. It was just I saw it, and they were there, to help the judge make the right call. And that doesn't mean that the judge might not have been unduly influenced by something else, but it was very interesting to see. And they're sort of like the lords of karma, both good and bad consequences and whatnot, but they have such a large role, like over everybody. It helps when we can point someone out. It's kind of like you're taking a flashlight and you're highlighting one situation when you're doing spell work that you need their attention for, and you're shining a light on this situation. You're making your case. You're telling them who it is, what you think they've done, what you know they've done, what someone else says they've done, whatever it happens to be. And that draws their attention to that specific situation, and then they can move energies into place in order to quicken up the consequences so they don't necessarily take so long, they're not so drawn out. That's the best way I can think of to describe that. And we have done that for different kinds of spells depending on what it is, or workings or so forth. So working with the planetary energies can be very interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of advantageous if you think about it. If you turn something over to the judges, then they make the decision based on that person's actions and everything. So you're not making any negative actions towards an individual. You're just reporting a situation, so to speak. So in case you're wrong or something, then you don't end up with nasty karma.
And you're sort of leaving it in the hands of a higher
Leaving
authority.
in the hands of a higher authority, yeah.
That kind of
exactly.
thing. And whatever they decide to do, bam, that's that. So Arcane says, laugh my ass off. That's hilarious. You got to buy a ticket first. Teresa says, I'm a Capricorn rising. Well, I'm Capricorn sun and moon and Gemini rising, which is as much as I know about my chart off the top of my head. Beth says, on your Facebook group, there was a question, and I may have given them too much detail. I was a little perplexed when they asked where I got my information from a lifetime. Hello? Well, yeah, I mean, but that's good. So Beth says, Aquarian, Pisces cusp. Yeah, I'm Capricorn, Aquarian cusp. So born on the 17th of the month, January 17th. So not total cusp, but pretty close. Arcane says, I'd rather be self-deprecating than overly cocky and disappoint, but I can see either extreme being annoying, honestly.
Yeah, but it's so is that self-deprecating. Just it's not that they're annoying. It's just that they're probably hurting themselves in the public arena because people base so much on, so much of how people perceive you is not as much what you do, but is how they picture what they think you're attempting to do, and all the thoughts people have in their heads. Most people don't take just something you do and accept it. Most people feel usually according to their own motivations and things, they feel you did it for this reason or that reason, and those things are pretty automatic in a lot of cases. So you have to watch out not to get something like that started, and and don't want to instill in your audience, if you're going to play for them, for example, that you're going to be bad. Being self-deprecating is okay, but don't be overly so, or you're doing yourself harm.
Yeah, I think too that a lot of people that are in to the field that we're into, one of the things people worry about is getting too overblown in ego.
Oh, that's one of the things I worry about for sure.
And sometimes they confuse being able to honestly evaluate your strengths as well as your weaknesses with getting an ego. And it's okay to know and acknowledge what it is that you can do well if you do something well. And
but you have to be careful. As long as that's just an honest judgment of yourself and what you can do well, it's when you start comparing it to other people, like I'm better than this person or I'm better than that person, that's when you get into trouble, when it becomes ego.
Well, yeah.
If you can leave it just as a view of I can do this, I can do that, then you're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of an accomplishment that you've made, because you did it. That's a good thing. But
again,
my mom always said,
that,
you're always going to find people that are better than you and that are worse than you. So if you try to lord it over the people who aren't doing as well as you, then it's a bad thing.
Yeah, everybody has different skills, and that should be recognized. But like you said, as long as it doesn't get attached. If I can do this job, and I think about it honestly, it's like that. As long as I'm not thinking about, oh, you're a peon because you can't do this, or
putting somebody else down in order to make yourself feel smart.
If it makes somebody else small, then it's a problem. Or if you get too attached so that it becomes a hindrance to your actions, then it's a problem. Get too attached to trying to uphold a self-image. That's one of the things that happens. People get so into having to uphold their self-image, then what their normal reaction would be just gets pushed in the background because they feel they have to be this way. A good example is the macho thing, where men feel like they have to meet a certain standard of macho. Like as an example, how many men tell each other, I love you? I just told my friend that the other day when he was in great distress. But, that's often one of these things that gets stopped because of the whole macho thing. And,
Yep, programming.
Yeah.
Expectations, social programming, social expectations. It's hard to just be a genuine individual and not have all those things influencing you, which is something we're always working on.
Yeah.
So Teresa says, I'm a Gemini moon. Beth says, my mate is Capricorn. We are like peas and carrots. Teresa says, you were born on the same day as my crusty friend. And Beth says, but I'm the Dom. Um, and I am at peace and love kitty cat. Good. Astra says, hey everyone. Hi, Astra. And that says, keep your solar plexus and check self confidence is great, but always be humble.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, Currency Riddler says, self deprecation can be quite harmful if you keep the concept of memetics in mind. Beth says, when we all come together with our different skills, what a beautiful, magical moment in time. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, people that are new at this are often intimidated by meeting somebody who is more experienced at it. If the person that they're meeting that's more experienced is like me, everyone has to start somewhere. Everyone is a beginner at some point. And just because I have a lot more experience and years and abilities and control and so forth, it's because I'm 74 and I've been doing this and knowing I'm doing this since I was 4 years old. So it's accumulation of many years of mistakes and experiences and so forth that go behind it. But I don't look down on people who are just starting out, because everybody starts somewhere. Everyone has to start at the beginning at some point in time. And I think that's the difference. If you're taking what you know and using it to prop yourself up and make other people feel smaller than you, then you're getting into a power over, power under dynamic, which is something I try to avoid as much as possible. I'm want to be with the power with powers model where people are equal, as they're just different. But yeah, it is always interesting. Astra says, I do talk crap about religious people sometimes because I've been bullied by religious authorities. Sometimes I do gloat that I'm spiritually awake because I've been told I was possessed.
Yeah, I got that as a child. I was told I was possessed. I once got a computer sprinkled with holy water because I had a game on it called Satan's Hollow.
Yeah, and amazingly, his computer survived the exorcism. I guess they didn't turn it on.
I was actually an adult at that time. I had loaned my computer to my sister for a while. That's when we had it exercised, which is pretty ridiculous. Yeah. But yes, I had the whole thing, bully religious authority things growing up. So I try to keep myself from it, but I do the same thing sometimes. Get offended by the rampant craziness of some of it. Yeah.
So Asher continues, because I have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So I still have hurt feelings and insecurities. So I'm not trying to have an ego, but it's hard not to go tit for tat. Well,
yeah.
I mean, anger is a normal emotion like anything else. And you learn how to express it more appropriately and healthily and so forth.
The religious stuff. What I experienced as a child, I would call abuse. It wasn't physical abuse. There was no sexual abuse, nothing like that. But mental and emotional abuse, yeah, very much so.
And Astra continued, because I'm still establishing myself, so some of what could be considered ego is actually me just asserting myself. So I guess dealing with my insecurities would help. Well, I mean, we're all like, a work in progress. That's all there is to it. And none of us are perfect, and we make mistakes. And we're just trying to figure things out. And it can be hard. It can be difficult and complicated, because we are complex, emotional beings.
Yeah.
And when we have really abusive things happen in our background, it gets a lot more complicated. And I know, because I've gone through a lot of that stuff. This morning was a day when things were coming out a lot because of some emotional stuff going on in the household. So it was pretty interesting this morning. Beth says, Siofra, before studying, you were born with it like me, and it's a pleasure to guide a newbie. I don't judge, but starkly with ego know-it-alls. Yeah, I don't. Anyone who tells me that they know everything, I know is an idiot, because no one can know everything. Confidence in what you know is one thing, but even when you're confident in what you know, if you're actually intelligent, you know that you may be wrong in your assumptions and are open to looking at things from a different perspective in order to try and figure out, is this really where I'm comfortable? And if you have to reevaluate your assertions about reality and how it works and so forth, you do it. But the people that the know-it-alls obviously don't know what they're doing at all, because that's not how reality works. My opinion. So Currency Riddler says, hey, computer chips do oddly look like sigils.
I have to admit that never occurred to me.
Yeah. And some of them
That's
actually
funny,
have things they write on them.
Yes.
It's like, you know, those
Oh, it's
microscopic.
True. They got microscopically embedded
Yeah,
signatures.
and they like put signatures on it that you can only see with like an electron microscope. They're like moving atoms around to make their signature. Just sort of magic when you think about it that way.
But it is kind of funny. I had to laugh more than anything about the computer being sprinkled with holy water, you know?
Yeah. Beth says, Astra, it's okay, love. You've got to believe in yourself, honey. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Beth. Beth says, I keep my mouth shut around know-it-alls.
I do too, usually, if I can.
Yeah. A person who actually knows how to do something doesn't feel the need to brag about it and to expound upon how brilliant they are. The more someone tells me how brilliant they are, the more I'm on alert. Because if you just know, you know. And you don't need to broadcast that.
Yeah.
So it's there's a huge difference. Being a genuine individual is replete with potential for making mistakes and owning them, and then transforming yourself.
The other thing is it's also replete for people misunderstanding, because so much of our society is not about being a real individual. It's about putting forth an image of what you want other people to think of you. And most people do this automatically. They put forth an image of what they want other people to think. And a lot of times they'll do anything to keep that image up, sacrifice their own, what would be their own personal morals and belief systems in service of holding up this image, you know, and it's all a false way to act, but it's so prevalent in our society that's taken as like the thing. If you're not putting on this great false front and people don't see that, then they just think there's something wrong with you when you're just being yourself a lot of times.
This is true.
Not always, but you know, it depends on the venue you're in and everything.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's and the other thing about that is that false image eventually falls apart, because it's sort of like lying versus being truthful. Lies are a lot more complicated. They take a lot more energy.
You have to remember.
You have to like keep working the lie. You have to change the lie, modify the lie depending on input that's coming to you. If someone is suspicious about the lie, then you try to explain it. You know, there's a huge amount of work and effort, energy that goes into creating that fake persona and then maintaining it and keeping other people from finding out. That's why, like that guy in Arizona, I think it was, who pretended to go to medical school and all this other stuff that he wasn't doing when his wife got pregnant with her, and he was going to like graduate from medical school and move, etc. And then it turned out that none of that was true, and to keep her from finding out, he murdered her.
Oh, geez.
You know, so it can lead that far, and that's the reason, is because everything he said was a lie and he was going to be found out. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, wow.
Yep.
All right, so Currency Riddler says, Gnosis is an everlasting process after all. Yep. Astra says, that's true, Ian. It's the persona. And Beth says, Ian, so true, especially when you reach the crone stage. And Jacqueline says, I have a hard time keeping the smirk off my face when a know-it-all is knowing it all. And Beth says, the mask always slips. And thank you, Jacqueline. It's true. You just go like, I think I had a client come in one day, and within the first 10 minutes, he was a professional golfer. He had won a bunch of tournaments, which he'd never been golfing, as far as I could tell. Had his own sound studio, was making records. I mean, everything came out of his mouth with some bragging lie. And yeah, I just sat there going like, okay. Now, are we going to do a massage or what? It's like, I really don't care about any of that stuff. What's happening with your body? But the need to impress,
to getting a massage,
and the need to impress was so automatic. I imagine that I remember when I was a kid once, I pretended I couldn't speak English for a while and I could only speak French. I thought that would be kind of cool and make people not understand me and pretend I couldn't understand them. And one time I pretended I was a circus performer. And I was at the trapeze at the playground, and this girl came up that I didn't know, and I was telling her about my circus life, being raised in a circus family, being a trapeze artist and all this other stuff. She finally figured out I was lying and called me on it. I was like, I'm not a good liar.
How old were you?
Probably 10,
Yeah.
maybe. I think about 10. Could have been younger, but
I was really small. I remember once when I was really small. I mean, I was little. It was probably like 4, 5, something like that. But I told my mother this big lie, and it's been so long ago. I was so young, I don't remember what it was. But what I do remember, which is hysterical, was that my feelings were so horribly hurt that she didn't believe me, even though it was a lie I made up. Like I say, so long ago, I don't know about what because I was too small to remember. But I just remember it's so funny now, thinking how hurt my feelings were that she didn't believe my lie.
yep, I failed as a liar. No, I'm crushed. So Astro says, that's cute, a circus performer. Yeah, well, my home life sucked, so anything, I was trying to have something that was better than my actual life, which could be the motivation for a number of people. Beth says, massage clients like that drive me bonkers, and time is so slow. I know. It's interesting. I mean, I enjoy meeting new people under controlled circumstances, mostly, because I'm just genuinely curious and interested in people and what they think and how they feel about stuff and what they're doing and that kind of thing. And it comes across. So people have a tendency to tell me all sorts of stuff they might not ordinarily mention to someone else. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I did not go to the rock show this weekend. I just really didn't feel like being in the venue where they put it this year, and it was there last year and the year before. It's at the casino, which the energy there is just kind of black to start with, and then you have to go
Full
through
of
all the
cigarette smoke.
smoking section
Yeah.
first to get to the non-smoking venue, which drives me up a wall because it's like,
We're both allergic to cigarette
ah.
smoke.
But it was just the mass of people and the energy there. I was not up to it yesterday because my Kundalini was still in its active kind of energetic thing the night before. It was like the most intense it'd been in a while. So I just like take care of me. I have lots of rocks at this point, thinking about all the rocks in my room. And I have rocks everywhere. What can I say? I love rocks, but Arcanum says, laugh out loud, Schaefer. Chief Keefe says, do you guys believe in the concept of archons or people being under the influence of archonic energies?
I have never learned enough about it to have an opinion one way or the other myself. It's just there's so many magical subjects to investigate. That's just not one I've ever really spent the time to learn anything about myself.
I believe in self-determination, so we all have influences, so I don't know either. I think free will and self-determination are important, whether it's an illusion or not. I still believe in it.
Well, I don't think it's an illusion, but
Melinda Hall says, I don't blame you. Sounds like you made the best choice for you. Arcane says, I think your funniest story thus far I've heard is the vampire coming to your apartment story. Yeah. That's our house, actually, into our temple, even. She was in our temple. And I'm like, no. Stop that. But actually, there was one that was even weirder. We had a different person that wanted to, potentially join. We didn't let her get into the temple, so that was good. We learned from the vampire one. And so everyone had to be in our house and like go through a class before we would let them near our temple. And she was in that part, and she was telling us that she was wanted to be a medium, and she was just opening herself up to any spirit that wanted to come in and have a go. And I'm like, no, do not do that in my house. And this is a bad idea. You have no discernment to let any old thing just wander in there and have a go. I mean, yikes.
Yeah, that's true. I'd forgotten all about her.
She was crazy. Needless to say, she didn't come back. I think she got the vibe, even though I didn't say anything out loud. It's just like, I don't want to be around a person who is so totally like out of control. I've seen that happen somewhere else, but
I just
Astra
Lost in that
says the
word.
Schumann resonance is at a 12 frequency. I think it's usually a 7 frequency. Okay. Jacqueline says no on Archon. Just another excuse for why things happen. Ah. Astra says, what vampires are real? Psychic vampires. They're very real and they're everywhere. And some of them don't know it and some of them do.
This one wanted permission to suck psychic energy from everybody and drain them.
Only with permission.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah.
Beth says, that's bananas. Teresa says, on YouTube, I see some channels claiming the universe has 11 dimensions while others claim there are 100 plus. And then there's stuff about third, fourth, fifth. With these leaps we're supposed to do, I'm confused. Yeah, my attitude towards that is it doesn't matter. They can make any claim they want, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. The reality is I'm here trying to be in this life and in this body and in this existence and be here as much as I can to get the most out of it as I can. And if I end up in the fifth dimension and ascending to another planet, I'll deal with that then. In the meantime, I don't want to be distracted from life and the things that matters. Like, it seems to me like a vehicle to pull us out of whatever it is that's actually going on around us, and it's just a huge distraction, in my opinion. And they are just theories. They're not like hardened facts. And some of them are just doing it for ego because they think it makes them sound way cooler and more important. And, pulling the wool over people's eyes or what have you. Astra says, laugh out loud. She didn't have any boundaries. Yeah, I know. None. Zippo. Beth says, you're either born to meet him or you're not. Astra says, ew. Beth says, boundary breakers have to go. Boundary breakers, no, go here. Astra says, the Kundalini could be active, Siofra, because the Earth's frequencies are slightly higher. Or it could be where I am in my life and between the full moon and the new moon and have nothing to do with Earth frequencies, but my own personal ones. Since I've been doing this since I was a child, I mean, my Kundalini has been rising. I remember being instructed by the voice when I would go to sleep at night, giving me exercises to do, and I did not know what they meant, clearing my chakras out and becoming aware of my other bodies, my astral body and mental body and so forth. These were the things I did when I was 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 years old. I mean, so yeah. And the Earth was not in a good place back then. So I don't know that it relates at all. I try not to make a huge deal out of it. It just is what it is. Astra says, yep, I've checked out the 5D stuff. Chief Keith says, psychic vampires tend to be very clumsy once you know their tricks. Well, they really don't like witches. I've read some of their actual tracks. They have instructions on the internet of what to do if you get around some witches and healers, and to not let them fix you, because there's nothing wrong with you. That's the way things are supposed to be. We're supposed to be built to suck energy from other people. That's kind of like, they're normal and they don't want to be fixed. And of course, as a healer, I'm like, here, there's something broken right there. It's like, can I fix that, please? So you can get energy from a place that is okay with you taking energy instead of having to suck it off of somebody who's not okay with it. Yeah. Astra says, it's the new age rapture. Yep, exactly. And it's the same old, same old. Putting it out there somewhere. Beth says, Siofra, are we twins? A lot of evangelicals are psychic vampires.
Yes,
oh,
that's true.
No kidding. The worst one I ever saw was I accidentally attended a Christian fundamentalist meeting that was apparently about Armageddon. I thought it was about nuclear power. They got me there under false pretenses. I was so naive. Want to know where nuclear energy is going in the future? I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good thing. And yes, it was not. And that guy was scary. He had black cords coming off of him, and he was sucking people up right and left. And I was sitting there in the front row, covering myself up with as many shields as I could get, trying to be invisible, not notice. They didn't notice me either, even though I was in the front row. They left me alone, so it worked. I was like, I hope I get out of here alive. Ooh, it was icky. But yeah, Melinda says, oh, wow. Astra says, there's a vampire society. Yeah.
Yeah, more than
And there's
one.
different kinds too. There's lifestyle vampires as well as spiritual
The
vampires.
vampires that actually physically want to drink blood.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
we have a few here in our community. And lifestyle vampires like to drink blood from one another, and they keep all their windows closed and stay out of the sun because the sun is bad for them. And there's one family that has children that are being raised in that environment, which concerns someone I know. I mean, she's worried about them, the children, but it's not against the law. Not the drinking of the blood part, but the staying indoors and only going out at night. So anyway, Teresa says my psychic attacker at some point was trying to claim I was his twin flame and wanted to do Kundalini stuff with me as part of his attacks.
Yeah.
Barf. And the whole twin flame things, don't even get me started on that. That's another one of those things. It's like trying to suck out your free will one way or another.
Yeah.
Astra says, my Christian friend got dumped on me, used to make me feel tired. Oh, okay. Now I think my friend was a vampire. She would feed on my trauma. Yeah. And that's one of the ways you can tell if someone's a psychic vampire, whether they know it or not. If being around them when you're gone, you're totally exhausted and drained. Part of that though is the problem of being an empath, because sometimes we do that to ourselves, where we open up too much and take on someone else's trauma to try and help them. So it's not always that, but that is definitely one of the indications. And then when they want to talk to you is only when they need you for that. So yeah. Beth says they're the most dangerous. Danger, danger, beware. Will Robinson. Yeah. Melinda. Love Melinda. Okay. Chief Keefe says, I've had multiple psychic vampires who actually mirrored my whole persona. It was like they absorbed and mirrored everything I did. Yucky. They have no identity of their own. What's wrong with them? Get their own thing. Asher says, and once my spiritual awakening started, she didn't want to be friends anymore because I developed boundaries and wouldn't let her proselytize me. Good, because boundaries are important. The first time I had boundaries in a dream state, when a bunch of Christians were coming after me in a dream, I was pretty excited because I got the god and the goddess to come and kick their butts. And I woke up going, woo, I did it. Got in that subconscious and rearranged things. So I was pretty happy. And Beth says, ew, icky energy. Astra says she ended a 12-year friendship overnight. Yep, it was probably both. She seemed to feed on my distress. She did the same thing to her adult children. Oh. Those people can be so exhausting. Arcane says, call me crazy, but I actually kind of believe in the undead paranormal kind of empire. Okay, I'll call you crazy. How's that? I haven't met one, so I have no clue. Teresa C. said, Chief Keith, that's classic narcissism. Yep. Gaga says, have you heard of the Book of Wisdom by Harry B. Joseph?
All right.
Beth says, I'm tired just hearing it. How many books have been written out there? We have a pretty extensive library, but we don't own every arcane book ever written.
Why not?
I don't know, because we don't have that much time to read anymore. We're doing stuff all the time.
That's true. Oh, yeah, I remember somebody mentioned this before. This is supposedly a book of wisdom that was removed from the Bible.
Oh, yeah, so it's probably just not real.
Because it's not perceived to be inspired by God, but the creation of humankind. Well, I consider
all of it was
all
that.
of it a creation of humankind myself, so, you know, what's the difference? But yeah, there's several others. There's, what is it? There's one of them that's basically like the 6th and 7th books of Moses supposedly are been removed from the Bible, and they're basically books of spirits and basically like a medieval grimoire looking thing. That supposedly, yeah. But I'm not familiar with that particular one, but
yeah. Astra says, yeah, I had another friend try to throw her cords into me while I slept to reestablish a connection. That's good to have some safety guards in place so that those things can't happen. Chief says, anyone ever heard of Egyptian dream incubation? I've certainly heard of dream incubation. I don't know if it was specifically Egyptian. I remember my initiation, one of my initiations when I was a priestess in Egypt, and it was 3 days out of my body, where you traveled through time and visited your future and past lives and had to make it back to your body by the end of the 3 days, or your body would die without your spirit in it. That's not quite dream incubation, though. But certainly you can incubate your dreams. It's not that difficult. You just focus on what you want to dream about during the day or for a week or so. Have the images around you all the time, talk about it, listen to things about it, put up pictures on your wall about it, think about it just before you go to sleep. If you want to have a specific kind of dreams about a specific deity, it's pretty easy to do that way. Although I've had deities visit me, especially I had Anubis come and visit me in a dream. I did not know who he was the first time he came to me in a dream. But he told me his name and showed me what he was about. And then I looked him up after I woke up, and sure enough, that was definitely the energy that I encountered. So it's interesting. So Astor says, that friend also liked to feed off of distress. Kundalini helped me so much. I don't have any vamps in my life anymore. Yay! I don't either. Gaga says, the book talks about how the Bible secretly is talking about the human anatomy.
Well, there is some I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but there are some ideas that the book of Revelations and the seven seals actually refers to the seven chakras, and it's a method of awakening the Kundalini, so that there's supposedly some arcane science about Kundalini and stuff hidden in the book of Revelations. And there certainly could be from reading it, but I figured if you would really want to pull it out and understand it, if it's really there and it really is esoteric wisdom, you'd have to get something that hasn't been translated according to just Christian thought, and somehow manage to read the original, something like that, to really pull it out. But it does seem, reading through it, like the opening of the seven seals could relate to the opening of the chakras and things.
Or it could just be one of those things where people like to put things together that may not belong but have some
that's what
superficial
I say.
Similarity.
You'd really have to look at the original documents without translations according to the Christian belief system to find out if there's anything to that, really.
Yeah. Chief Keef says the Temple of Solomon represents the body according to some, and also Jesus died at 33, a reference to the bones and the vertebrae to some.
I'd say represents the body according to more than just some. That's a major thesis of
the Temple of Solomon?
Masonry. Yeah. Yeah, Masonry. Freemasonry. All the actions in Freemason, the first 3 degrees in that, and the death and rebirth, all those relate to the building of the Temple of Solomon. In fact, without going into it too much detail, the first 3 Masonic degrees are about that. In the 3rd degree, the person has come up to the master, and that's where the master gets killed by the workmen who are rebelling. And so it's all about Solomon's temple, and it's about what they call the uncarved stone, the ashlar, being the beginning Freemason that hasn't been carved into a particular form yet by the teachings and philosophies and finding of religion and all that.
A blank slate.
So yeah, it's Masonry. The first degrees of Masonry are all about Solomon's temple, and it's taken in that fashion as being the body. It's very allegorical. You can find a lot of that kind of stuff in Masonic symbolism. There's a whole lot there.
Denise says, hi, everyone. Hi, Denise. Welcome.
And of course, the 33rd degree Masonry. But I think that probably has a different reason. I think the 3rd degree Freemasonry has nothing to do with Jesus dying at 33, but it's more related to the fact that there are 32 paths of wisdom on the tree of life, and then when you master them, that's the 33rd. You reach the 33rd position, and that's what the
And then you get to be a Shriner.
33rd degree of masonry relates to in that sense. Doesn't mean they've achieved complete enlightenment, but it's symbolic of that reaching the top, the two-headed eagle and things like that.
So Asher says, is it normal to be sort of scared of being powerful? Like on some level, I know I have a measure of power, but the religious remnants in my mind try to shut it down, like we're going to get in trouble.
It is kind of normal, but I would recommend trying to get rid of it, get rid of those religious things, and then, you should always be concerned about it because with power comes a responsibility that you could hurt somebody, and if you use it, for example, say you are a powerful magician and you can hurt somebody, and then you find out you were mistaken and somebody else is responsible and you were fooled or something. And so any kind of power you should always be, aware of and cautious of. So feeling cautious about it to a certain extent is normal, but don't let the religious stuff get in there and skew your perspective. Keep it, logical and rational and what feels right.
She says, I'm trying to, but
as much as you can.
I think it's in my subconscious.
Yes, I know.
That's what ritual is for.
Yep, I've had plenty of that in my subconscious. Yep.
Ritual is the tool and the method in order to address and help transform and change the subconscious in a person. And so you figure out what it is. I mean, we had that one ritual, simple ritual that Starhawk did, which was chanting a person's name to make it a chant of power, and people would freak out. It's like, no, you can't do that. So when I started doing ritual, all the ritual I did and any spell work I did was all for me, to change me, to deal with the trauma of my childhood, to interact with the different parts of my personality, to gain access to that child that had been so traumatized by my childhood and so forth, and to heal those scars in my psyche and get everybody on board so that we could have a life and go forward and experience a different kind of reality than the one I was raised in. And the assumptions that we absorb when we're younger about how reality works and what's going to happen. So if you stand up for yourself, you get punished when you live in a toxic environment. So if you show any signs of self-determination, independent thought, ability, skill, or whatever, the person who is in charge of that environment doesn't want you to thrive. They want you to fail, feel inferior, and subjugated in order to maintain their position of power over top of you. And so that gets really into the unconscious and the subconscious of the mind. And so ritual speaks with symbolism because that's the language of the subconscious. All the words we say, all the logic that we have, all the ideas that we come up with mean nothing to the subconscious without being able to translate that into some kind of direct imagery and experience that it can absorb.
I would go so far as, that type of ritual is so important and so effective in affecting a person that the whole aspect of the OTO, the Order of the Oriental Templars, the OTOs associated with Crowley and such, that whole order is an experiential order. It's not a teaching order like the Golden Dawn, where it's there to teach you things. It's an experiential order where the purpose is for you to undergo these life-changing experiences and get these energies awakened within you through rituals. So, the whole point of the OTO, at least in the outer degrees, is the experience of going through the rituals, really, and developing according to that. And some of them can be potentially dangerous as far as awakening energies in you at certain points. So they have checks and balances, and you have to be approved by the person above you before you can go through the ritual in case you experience some bad effects. I knew a couple of people who had some bad effects from going through the third degree, which is the death experience in general there. And Um, their instructor recommended them not to go any further, and then they did, and ended up making things worse and dropped out. So they can be very powerful and effective. Ritual can if it's done well.
Yeah.
And like I say, that's it's in the OTO at that point is entirely experiential about the experience and getting activated and awakened. So it's very, very powerful and effective on its own. If you know, if it's a good ritual and if you're doing it right and all that other stuff that goes along with things normally.
Beth says, on a lighter note, I practiced simple kitchen witchery this week. I made a homemade chili last night. We made a miniature Thanksgiving meal, trying to invite fall to come. Well, good for you. Asher says, oh no, yeah, I don't want to accidentally harm anyone, but I also want to protect myself. So sending energy back is a good thing. Yes, I've done the cup meditation you have on your channel. I'm going to start doing that every day. And that makes so much sense that how my abusers were. Yes, the introjected or internalized bully. Yeah, you get their voice in your head. For me, one of the things that helped me when I started to go through all the ritual stuff I did was the realization that my father had been picking the people I was, the men I was attracted to all my life without me knowing it until then. And it's like, because he was not capable of love, he was a horrible person, he was truly an evil individual. And because of that, my unconscious kept, or subconscious kept trying to find people, men, who weren't capable of love, and then tried to convince them to love me, that I was worthy of love. And it was always doomed to fail, because if you're together with someone who's like that, there's no fixing it. There's no way forward. It's just a repeat of the same pattern over and over again. And so when I realized that, I thought, I'm not going to allow my father to win, to make these decisions for me going forward. And that's when I was in earnest to change how I function, how I see the world, how I interact with the world, and so forth. Not that it was easy, and it certainly is still an ongoing process, but I feel a lot more confident that if I'm going to make a mistake, I want it to be mine, not his. And so being able to figure out what those assumptions are about how reality works and being able to challenge them was a good step. I used to think I was evil and nothing would ever stop that from happening. Eventually it would just happen and I would destroy everything around me, things like that. And so, yeah, figuring out what those assumptions are and then finding real ways in order to challenge them. Give yourself situations where you can succeed at something that you think you can't succeed at, and build up that level of experience and confidence that goes along with being able to do it. And choosing what is important to you, what matters. It's like, this is about what matters to you, not what matters to me or to Ian or anybody else. Or your abuser, especially, you don't want to do what matters to your abuser because they don't deserve your attention. But yeah, if you're going to become a real human being, you have to do it yourself. There's no quick fix, pill, spell, book, idea, or whatever that's going to do it all at once. It's complex and multi-leveled and takes time to unwind. When I was a kid, I was very, very excited when I heard about the knot, the Gordian knot. When I was in school, they told us about the Gordian knot, and I was a knot untier. I was famous for untying knots, and when I heard about it, I was very excited. I'm like, oh, a challenging knot. I could do that. And then, of course, they told us that it didn't exist anymore because Alexander the Great took a shortcut and smacked the stupid knot with a sword and undid it that way, which I thought was cheating anyway. But I was very devastated. I was a very literal child. Still am pretty literal. So, expectations and whatnot are just, it's a funny thing. But your brain is kind of like that Gordian knot. Really, your spirit, your evolution, who you're going to become, is the slowly pulling out, unraveling, finding where things are pulling, figuring out, is this one of those kinds of places where I have to like yank it to tear it apart?
And you shouldn't cut it with a sword.
Yeah. Or should I like push this together with love and compassion and understanding so I can see how it's made and allow it to unfold and release itself? I think it's not a bad image to try and figure that out. more better actually than the onion, kind of thing, because I think it's a lot more complicated than just the surface going through. But anyway, that's me. So Chief says the OTO is basically Carl Jung shadow work on steroids. No,
No, not at all.
no.
The OTO is almost no shadow work whatsoever. Again, it's an experiential order, so what that means is that the ritual is not just affecting your subconscious. Ritual is capable of waking energies, and the OTO rituals are specifically oriented towards waking certain Kundalini energies through putting energy into people's chakras that's already to awaken them. People who are of a higher awakening, and there's some participants on the astral planes in the rituals that do some things with the individual, and basically it's awakening of certain energies in the individual by force, basically, and then the individual has to get accustomed to those energies and take them in slowly and adapt to them, and they will change because they're changing how your chakras function as you go through there. They're awakening certain things, and then you have to get used to those. And if you go through them before you're ready, I heard the term used, people popping like popcorn, because when the OTO was almost non-existent, it was literally down to 2 or 3 people at one point. So they would close down a bar and actually just initiate everybody in the bar to hope people would, some of them would just stick with the OTO to try to get membership up before it died. And they did, succeeded in resurrecting the OTO. But the term that I heard used was people popping like popcorn, and they'd get energies awakened in them that were just too much for them, and they couldn't handle it, basically ruined their lives. So the OTO is a system that you have to be careful with. It's a certain amount frightening because of that, because it awakens those energies, and then they're in your life and you have to deal with them afterwards and accommodate them and take them in and become accustomed to them. And yeah, so it's a different kind of experience. It's not one of those normal things working through subconscious imagery and all that. There's actually a component of actual energy manipulation happening. Some of the rituals are designed to distract your mind, so you won't notice that some of these things are happening and things like that. They're very complicated and very well done. The rituals predated Crowley, but Crowley rewrote them and revised them according to his best knowledge and everything he knew, and incorporated the original knowledge and the original founders, which some of them were in the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, or the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, I think it was called, which was a sexual magic group with instructions and stuff. So they had a lot of the information, the rituals predating Crowley, but Crowley really smoothed them out and made them extremely elegant and very, very effective. I can say for myself, they're very, very effective.
Okay, so Gaga says, do you believe in low vibration and high vibration foods? Not really. I believe that they're all different vibrations, but they're all life energy and life force. And it's what works for your body and what you need that decides whether it's good or bad. If high and low is the definition of good and bad, I mean, that seems to be when people divide things like that. They're saying that lower vibration foods would make you like slower and
But
not
you
as
know what?
smart, etc. And I just think it's red herring.
Not only that, but you need aspects of all 4 elements. Some people, if they're all floaty, they need the heavy aspects and what Indians would call tamasic foods, or that earthy foods. And they're only bad if you have excess earthiness. The higher vibration foods, theoretically, are only good if you need that. I mean, having only the higher vibration stuff, what they call higher vibration stuff, is fine, but you get ungrounded. You might end up with vitamin deficiencies. So it really requires a balance of all, or even better, to understand what you need and what you don't need. And that's the more important way to understand. Again, I'd go right back to Barden on that to find the truth of that matter, back to the elemental aspects and how they relate to the foods. And if you're excess fiery or excess airy, or if you're excess watery, you're too emotional maybe. If you're excess fiery, you might be too angry all the time, you know, things like that.
So Astra says, my mom told me I'd be alone and no man would love me, and I've been single because of the low self-esteem. Well, being single is not necessarily a bad thing either. Beth says, Astra, ignore her and work through the hurt. She's projecting her crap on you and wants you to hurt. My mother did that, and I'm still working through it. Astra says, so I realize it's like she cursed me, so I'm realizing I do deserve to be loved. She just dumped her garbage on me. My mom's a jack. Yeah, I agree. Beth says, Astra, we are different, and that's a good thing. Astra says, thanks, Beth. I don't talk to my mom anymore. She's a terrible person. And that's the thing. Just because she's family doesn't mean you
Yeah, I had that.
have to.
I was not talking to my mom for years before she died. And then I was just relieved when she died. Sometimes relationships can just be that bad with parents.
Beth says, Astra, exactly. I experienced that wrath. What mother is jealous of their own daughter behind closed doors? Astra, I cut mine off for 7 years, brought her back in my life, and she was the same, but a good grandmother, and I spent 7 years keeping her alive when she had 1 year to live, only for my grandson. Astra says, yep, my mom was so terrible, and my sisters too. Having a daughter should be a precious thing. It's crazy she saw innocent children as her competitors. Narcs are not right in the head. That's a fact. Beth says, our family had power even though the sheriff came to talk to her. They shut it down. Chief Keef says, I ran into so-called popcorn folk. They didn't do any rituals, but did research a lot of occult topics without any grounding. Could that awaken any of the primordial forces you just mentioned?
Probably not so much, because really it takes practice. I mean, the more you practice, the better you get. These people, like in the OTO, have been trained for this. They're the inner degrees. They receive training on how to do it, how to awaken the chakras, and I mean, there's a real science behind it. And these people who form the rituals, like I say, Crowley just revised them, but all the information and stuff was dug up before that, and it's all very powerful stuff and takes training and research and knowledge, and there's a real science to it. So in general, I mean, unless some of those things could get awakened accidentally, theoretically, but in general, it's not. I mean, some people do have Kundalini awakening, I've heard, that happens from just falling wrong and hitting on their coccyx and things like that. Occasionally has awakened Kundalini people. So, you know,
Anything's possible.
Those things can happen accidentally, but not very often.
Beth says, Astra, bless your heart. I was an only child. On the outside, looks like I got everything. Behind closed doors, it was hell. Astra says, wow, never heard of popcorn people. Denise says, I'm so sorry, Astra and Beth, for what y'all went through. I see so much hurt at the hands of our primary relationship, mom, dad, sending peace and love to you both. Yeah, and that's never a good thing. Chief says, me neither, but the name does make sense. Laughed my ass off at Astra. Astra says, yep, Beth, it seems every witch has to slay her dragons from being around narcs. In this case, narcissists. Not people who are looking to trick you into buying drugs. So they can arrest you. Astra says, yep, Ian. And Beth says, Astra, yes, sometimes many dragons. I held her in my arms so she died across the rover, cleared out so much ancestral karma. That's good that you could do that for her. Astra says, I like mantras, chant that seems to help stabilize the Kundalini. And thanks, Denise. Beth says, Denise, thank you, love. Astra says, drugs, ha. Yeah, that's always what I think of when I see the term narcs.
Yeah, I have some mantras I use to a certain extent too. Not consistently, though.
Astra says, wow, Beth. So we're actually like 40 seconds left on our hour and a half. So I guess we have to say goodbye now. But this was a great conversation as usual. And, I think we need to keep these kind of conversations going so that we can get healthier as people and more powerful as witches and pagans and magical users of all kinds, and get out of our own way and get healthy. We'll have a much better chance that way. So anyway, guys, as usual, thank you for all your time. And we'll see you all next week at least. Ian says goodbye now. Thanks for your great conversation. Beth says great. I've live. Blessed be everyone. Yep. Teresa says enjoyed it. Thanks. And Ian says blessed be, and I say blessed be too. So everybody have yourself a great week, and we'll talk to
Goodbye,
you
everyone.
online, or we'll talk to you next week. So